What is up guys, and welcome to my latest video here on MPC Vids. On today's video I have my MPC 2500 out. Unfortunately this isn't getting turned on today, but it is the topic of the video. I'm going to be talking about legacy devices, buying legacy devices, and some tips that I'd offer to you guys before you take the plunge. You don't want to waste your money on something that's a dud, so I'm going to give you some things that you can look at and check before you buy the unit to hopefully make sure that it's all working and worth your hard-earned money. Just before I start, I have a drum pack that supports this channel at the moment. There's a link in the description to it. It's called Boom Bap Drums Volume 1 and it's great for boom bap and hip hop style beats. It's an instant download after purchase and you can put it on any machine or use it in your DAWs as well. So check out the link in the description. It's really reasonably priced and it just helps to fund what I'm doing here. I'd really appreciate it if you could take a look at that. Okay, so let's get into the buying guide for legacy MPCs like this one. Now the first thing I advise that you look at is the overall cosmetic condition of the device. Does it look like it's a device that's been looked after? Is it clean? Is it presentable? Are there any dints or knocks on the surface, on the face, anywhere on the device? Is the screen free of scratches like this one is? Hopefully you can see that. I think you might be getting quite a lot of reflection there, so I'll just pop that back down. The cosmetic condition is going to give you a good indicator of whether the person that owned the device actually cared about it at all, actually looked after it. If they haven't even bothered to look after the overall look and cleanliness of the device, then God knows what's happening underneath. So I think it is a really good indicator to see whether a device has been cosmetically well looked after. As you can see with my 2500, it's pretty close to being immaculate. Now, this isn't actually working at the moment, but that's for different reasons. But cosmetically speaking, when I got this device, it looked exactly like this. It's obviously been very, very well looked after throughout its history, and I've continued to do that, continued to maintain how nice it looks, how clean it is. I think that's a really good indicator, so that's the first thing that you should definitely check. Moving on from that, the next thing is probably all the sort of knobs and dials that stick out on the device. Now, these are things that can really easily get broken, either through transport or by people putting other gear on top of this gear. So check all the dials work properly and work nicely. They have a nice firm action to them. Check all the way around and make sure that they all work properly. The faders down at the bottom here, they should have a nice smooth action. There shouldn't be any stickiness with these. Now, as you can see, these faders are a real spot where a lot of dirt and grime can get inside these gaps here. So as you can see with mine, they have a really, really nice, firm and smooth action to them. Absolutely no problems with those, so make sure that they're okay. So the jog wheel on mine at the moment isn't actually working. I've disassembled this and tried to put it back together and it's not worked properly. But when you're looking, absolutely make sure that the jog wheel moves all the way around, it clicks nicely. This one doesn't actually move at the moment, but you can test yours and make sure that's all working. All the parts of the device which kind of stick out are definitely worth checking. So the faders, the dials and the jog wheel, make sure they all have a nice action to them like you would expect. The next thing, and this is going to be a little bit more awkward to check because you do have to get the device turned on, up and running, but it's all these little buttons all over the face of these older devices. Now, these buttons are essential to your workflow, and that is the reason why I can't use this device at the moment, is because a lot of the buttons aren't currently working. So basically, under each button there's a thing called a pot, and these buttons press that pot on and off. It's like a little switch. You can hear them being pressed on and off when you press the buttons. That's what gives the MPCs that kind of distinct sound with the buttons. Really kind of clicky, old school sound. Over time, these pots wear just through use, unfortunately, and that's what's happened with mine. It's no fault of anyone's that's ever owned this device. So absolutely make sure that all of these are working, because if a couple of them break, so for example, my tap tempo broke, which was a really valuable button, and that was super annoying. You can actually assign tap tempo to a pad, but it just wasn't as nice as having the button. And crucially, my back to start button, so back to the start of the bar, that's gone as well. So when I'm trying to re-record stuff or overdub stuff, I can't get back to the start of the bar. I'll do more about this in another video, but basically the pots are essential to the workflow of the device, so make sure they're all working. If you can't get the device turned on, just go around all of them and make sure they have a good clicking action to them at the very least. It might not indicate whether it works or not, but if they're not clicking or if they feel sticky or stuck, then I would definitely avoid. But yeah, they should all have a nice action. I would personally recommend that you ask for the device to get turned on so you can check all those. Moving on from that is the pads. Now obviously the pads are like the cornerstone of using an MPC. They're where you put all your drums down or your samples, you're chopping your samples and putting them on the pads. First of all, visually inspect the pads and see what they look like. I've seen some absolute messes online where they've got huge kind of wear circles on each pad. Now obviously people do heavily use these devices and these will wear over time naturally, but the problem with older MPCs as well is that they have sensors underneath these pads, and if they've been battered over the years, if they've been mistreated and overused, they can wear out and that can really affect the experience of using it, especially with velocity sensitivity on the pads. So inspect the pads and make sure that they look presentable and clean and looked after. And again, if you can get the device turned on and give them a try, that's absolutely something you should request from the seller. But again, if you can't get that done, just visually inspect them and see what they look like. You can see with mine are in absolutely fantastic condition. These are the factory pads and they look brand new again, so there's no concerns from me really with these pads, and when the machine was running, these were all working absolutely fine. One of the big things about the MPCs is the screen. Now the lighting that I'm under here, I'm just going to leave it at this angle, but the screens can fade over time. So ask to get the device switched on, see what the condition of the screen is, see what information it's showing. This one's really nice and clear. The one on my 2000 XL is kind of fading out and certain bits are missing. It's still usable, but you can tell that it's kind of on its way out. So obviously the screen is really important with these devices. You need to have that visual feedback about certain things. So check the screen and make sure that there's no imperfections on that. They can wear out over time as well, so that's definitely something that's worth checking. The next thing I'd advise heavily is that you ask about what customizations have been done to the device. Now I actually have done a couple of customizations myself on this device. I upgraded to JJOS and I upgraded the RAM as well. Obviously I'm comfortable with those modifications, and since doing both those, the machine ran flawlessly. But if you find a heavily customized unit, then I would definitely lean on the side of caution, because over time those things can have an effect on the overall unit. If it's not factory, then things are likely to go wrong. Is there custom pads on it? Have they swapped the LEDs underneath some of these buttons that have lights underneath them? Is there a new screen on it? Have they updated the storage to be SD? If all those things have been done DIY, then that could cause you problems further down the line. So make sure you understand all the customizations that have been done on these devices, because if someone has done a lot themselves, then it could lead to problems later on. Obviously, some of the customizations are really useful, like the ones that I've done, so it can be of benefit to have some of the customizations done. Again, if you can, ask to see the unit in action, and that'll give you a good idea of the working order of it. I've got one last piece of advice, and that is to avoid things that look like they're too good to be true. So if there's an MPC that kind of looks in this condition, but it's a bargain price, there's usually always a reason for it. It could be stolen, for example. There could be something broken underneath that you can't see, but days, weeks, months down the line, you might find out that something's broken and it really affects the workflow. So generally speaking, I'd say avoid deals that look too good to be true. Now, obviously there's always exceptions to the rules, and sometimes these devices end up in the hands of people who have no idea what they are, so you end up getting a bargain price for them. But if there is something that looks like that, then just go through all the steps that I've mentioned in this video. Absolutely make sure everything's working, ask for it to be switched on, ask about customizations, etc, and that will give you a really good understanding of whether the deal is worth it or not. So I hope that all these tips help you guys. The Legacy MPCs are really fun to use. This is one of my favorite devices, and I really do need to get around to getting this fixed so I can get it up and running again. Let me know in the comments below, do you own any Legacy MPCs? I'd love to hear what you guys have got in your collection. Well, apart from that guys, keep making beats, and I'll be back with another video very soon.